What's going on, everybody? My name is Trey Brown. I am the host of Dad Sharpens Dad podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. That way, anytime anything drops, you're first to be notified. Now, the topic I have today that I wanted to walk through, well, first and foremost, thank you for joining us. It's been a couple weeks. It's been a really interesting past couple weeks. Let me get you caught up on life. So a couple months ago, my wife started working again full time. That hasn't been the case for 9 years. So when you go from having consistent support at home, whether it's taking care of the kids, whether it's grocery shopping, whether it's all the things that anybody that's staying at home, whether they're mom or dad or a caretaker, whoever's at home, handling home base, handling the things on a daily basis is crucial. Now, if you happen to change that construct where you got two parents in you got two parents going to work, you got kids going to school, you got a kid going to daycare. Well, that's been me the last couple weeks trying to figure it out, trying to still be productive at work, trying to still be productive within my business of video and photo, trying to be a good dad, trying to be a good husband, trying to be consistent with working out, trying to be consistent with trying to be healthy emotionally, socially, trying to still connect with guy friends. I have my guys night every Thursday, reaching out to them, trying to be consistent with seeing people, having a life, being a dad, being a husband, being all the things. And then sometimes it just does not feel like it's going in the best direction. It doesn't feel like it's going in the right direction. If you feel any of that, I would love for you to drop a comment and explain what your latest story is where you feel like you're falling short. Because that's exactly what today's topic is about. It's about presence over perfection. So what I'm doing that's a little different, I enlisted the help of ChatGPT. If you're not using any kind of AI software to kind of help better yourself, whether it's strategy, whether it's marketing, whether you're trying to be better at communicating, if you're not using any kind of AI, and this is not sponsored by any kind of AI, I wish I had that kind of influence. I would love that kind of revenue too. But if you're not using any kind of AI, I highly suggest that you jump on it. There are all kinds of different AIs for different things and different. The way I use it is I help get my thoughts together. That's just me. And whether it's personal development, whether it's with business, I usually have a good idea and I can grow and develop it within AI. But anyways, this is not about AI. AI is just helping. So the topic again is presence over perfection. ChatGPT came up with some questions that I want to answer on camera in real time, because I don't think a lot of people have the bandwidth and the availability to be 100% prepared. Sometimes we just got to go out and execute. That's what us dads have to do. So the first question I have here is, when was a time you felt like you were failing as a dad, even though you were still trying your best? Today. Nah, not today. But some context around what I tried to do when I feel like I'm going to set myself up to have the best day is I usually get to bed on time. I usually don't stay up late. Right now, it's really tough because the NBA playoffs run late. I love basketball. That's my thing. I've been keeping up with the players, who's still in, who's out, the matchups and all that stuff. If you're an NBA guy, it's hard to catch those West Coast games. I mean, the Lakers are out, but I still want to see the West Coast games. Right now, you got OKC and the Spurs. Very interesting matchup. So the times I'm setting myself up for my best version of my dad self is I'm getting to bed on time. And I'm usually waking up early to hit the gym. The reason why this is important for me is I need space. I need time to think. I need time to get my thoughts out, get my game plan for the day. And usually when I hit the gym, I put on my headphones, I'm listening to either an audiobook, a podcast, something that's motivating, something that's inspiring daily. That's the best version. If it were possible daily, I probably wouldn't have started this podcast. So, but here we are. So usually when I wake up early and I get my mind right, then I get back home and then I can do things like I usually cook for my wife breakfast. I usually prepare breakfast for my kids, and then the youngest comes downstairs and then she has her little meal ready. But not all the time that happens. So I can set up everything, but for whatever reason, if something happens, like if I forget to do something or something that's really important needs to be done, and I'm starting off my day with the personal development, I'm starting off by cooking, I'm starting off by getting myself and my mind right to be able to be a productive husband, a productive dad, a productive employee for the day. For whatever reason, if I get something wrong or if I mess up or if I miss something, like I just get in a funk, and that's like an internal thing. I don't know why. Part of the theory is that I've always had to produce as a military, as a Marine son, having to produce, having to do the dishes daily, having to vacuum daily, having to have my dresser drawers. I mean, can you imagine kids having their dresser drawers straight, neat, organized, and the clothes folded? So I just have this mindset that sometimes when I don't get things right, I'm harder on myself than my family is. Heck, I'm harder on myself than my employer is if I'm running a few minutes late. I don't know what it is, but whenever I don't execute and I have the intent of executing and hitting that A and getting that 100% or getting that excellent rating, for some reason I internalize it and it throws me off for the rest of the day. Nobody has anything to do with this. It's just this expectation for myself to produce, to be perfect, to remember my stuff. And I think a lot of it comes from just my idea of not needing help or not wanting help. I should probably say not wanting help, because I definitely have needed help. And so whenever I hit these markers and I hit these bullet points and I wake up and the day's just off and I mess up something, I take it on myself, and that affects the relationships within my family. That affects how I communicate with my wife. I just get in this funk. And I didn't identify that till maybe a couple years ago when I sat down with the counselor, and we just went through, what it means to be a son. I think a son wants to please their father. So we all have Heavenly Father. We all, or some of us may have an absent or present earthly father, but something within us is made to please our Father. And when we fall short, sometimes we don't know that there is that grace, there is that patience, there is that forgiveness, because it may not have been modeled for us. That's me, 100%. When I miss the mark, I take it on the chin. I put myself in timeout. So that's an example. So number 2. Oh, and if you could relate to this, drop it in the chat. Don't leave me out here feeling like I'm all by myself. Number 2 says, what's a small moment with one of your kids that probably seemed insignificant at the time, but stuck with you afterwards? Probably the moments with my daughter. So usually when I put my daughter to bed, we try to get her to bed at 7:30 p.m. every night. And we go to potty, and then we read a book. And when we read a book, she usually picks out the book. She usually finds something for us to read. It's usually something very short. We read the book, and I do this thing like I pretend like I'm sleeping. And I say, all right, Daddy needs to take a little rest. And I close my eyes, and then she does the same thing. She gets really close. She gets real close, like face to face. And I'm sitting here like this, and she gets real close. And then I'll open one eye, and then she's just staring at me. It's adorable. It's one of these things that even though it happens and even though it's a consistent thing, her 3-year-old mind, one day I'm going to have to remind her of those moments because I really doubt she's going to remember it. But it's just motivation to create those kind of moments. But bedtime with Vivi, just give me just 1 second. Daddy's so tired. And I pretend like I'm going to sleep, and she does the same thing. And one day she even started pretending like she was snoring. I was like, did you fall asleep around me before? I don't know where you got the snoring from. But super cute moment. That's something that I hope one day she remembers, or I'd love to just share that story and then have that kind of moment up in real time, when she's a little older in age. So number 3 says, have your kids ever remembered something you did that you thought was minor, but clearly meant a lot to them? There are a lot of jokes and there are a lot of gestures that I do as a dad, and a lot of times when I have the kids in the back and then I turn up the music and I just try to make a good time. So I remember one time we went to Wood and Iron. I took the 3 littles. I took my twin boys and Vivi. I took them to eat at Wood and Iron. And for years now, I haven't really listened to hip hop like I used to live, eat and breathe hip hop. I used to rap. I used to produce back in the day. I used to perform, all that stuff. And I just don't really listen to hip hop because of the language, a lot of times the content. And it's just something that I think that I don't necessarily want to defend hip hop music, especially the music that they're going to hear on the radio. So a lot of times we just put on worship music. So I was just thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I could put on Nas. I can. That song is super positive. I'm a huge Nas fan. And it's just a song that I could put on and I don't have to worry about what they're going to hear in the song, if it's like bad lyrics, if they're going to wonder, nothing inappropriate. So I crank it up. I know I can be what I want to be. So I put that on. Anyway, I had to forget I'm not a musician no more. I'm just a plain old dad. So I put that on. And then my kids loved it. And then as soon as the song's over, hey, Dad, can you play it again? And then so when we get in the car and then we have those moments, days after, my kids will say, hey, Dad, can you put on that Nas I Can song? And I'm like, oh, snap. They like Nas. So something like that, just sharing something that was special to me and them being appreciative of it, especially when it comes to music, because I'm a huge Nas fan. But them being able to ask to kind of recreate those kind of moments, listening to songs that I enjoyed, and them enjoying it, like that is like top notch right there. All right, let's see. Number 4 says, what's something about fatherhood that became harder than you expected once you actually became a dad? Man, this is tough because I have 2 sequences of becoming a dad. I became a dad at 19 and then I became a dad again years later. So I'm going to talk about the first time. Finances, 100%. Finances, because when you're 18, at least back then, it was really easy to get a credit card. And then it was really easy to get credit card debt. So I would open up credit. And then for a while, I was trying to manage my finances through credit. And what I mean by that is I was taking care of obligations, like I was paying rent with cash and I was paying daycare with cash. Or my debit card. And then a lot of the expenses when it came to diapers, formula, just things of that nature, I took care of credit. And I got into credit card debt pretty quickly, a couple years within being a dad. And I think the ease of just gaining credit access, it was attractive to be able to pay for the things that I wanted. I didn't have the income for all the things. I shouldn't have been buying all this stuff, but when I first got a bunch of music equipment and I built an in-home studio, I built that all on credit. So just balancing credit, and I got to a point where I wasn't able to get any more credit, and there's a point where I needed a car. I wasn't able to get approved for a car payment. I wasn't able to get approved for a car loan. And I think that's when I realized, man, this credit thing, finances and taking care of your money and having savings, this stuff is kind of important because I'm in a position where I need a vehicle and I just can't go get a car. Like, it's hard if you don't have the credit or the money. So 100% finances was the thing that became harder as a dad, because not just feeding myself, I had to take care of a child, create a place and space to have a child. Credit and finances, 100%. And I would say years later, with becoming married and having more kids, time 100% was probably the hardest thing I dealt with, because not only am I sharing my time with my wife, but I'm sharing my time with my kids. When my kids were first born, I didn't take PTO because I just wanted to hustle. I wanted to work. I've been in the sales job, and that was the time period. That summer, I struggled the most to hit the numbers that I needed to hit at work. I almost ended up in performance management. And if it weren't for my last supervisor making an exception and explaining to the manager, hey, he's okay, he'll manage, but he's just going through a lot. My kids were born prematurely, almost 7 weeks early, and then not taking PTO, and then one of them being in a NICU a week longer than the other and not taking PTO, and going to the hospital that morning, then going to work, and then going back to the hospital to visit. Kobe was in the hospital longer. And just balancing and managing time, because even though we had a savings account at the time, we had enough money that we did, like, if we missed a check, we had a savings account, we had an emergency fund, but time was the hardest to manage. Just being able to offer time to your kids, your wife, and even have friends to be social. I totally get it when parents have a child and they just shut down socially, because you're trying to bond, you're trying to grow closer to each other, you're trying to find a new rhythm, you're trying to figure out a new schedule and how things look after you have a kid. Time was the hardest thing, the biggest challenge that I had. Even though I had a child before, even though I'd been married, time 100% was the hardest thing to figure out as a new dad, of like having more kids. Time was the hardest thing. All right, so let's see. Number 5, what do we have here? Have you ever had to apologize to one of your kids? What did that teach you? Man, my wife is she's a big advocate on forgiveness and grace. And just being a dad, you just feel like you don't have to explain stuff. You don't have to explain what you're doing. And I think for a while, my younger kids, I just had this idea that I don't answer to them. And when you mess up, sometimes they wouldn't even know or notice. And just having those hard moments where I know fundamentally I'm trying to embrace some new concepts of being a better communicator, being softer, hugging, showing affection, things like that. When I say some things, or when I treat my kids a certain way out of frustration or anger, like, those are the moments that I've learned, like, I got to make it right. I can't leave the feeling where it just like, I think anger and disappointment, it just separates the father and the child. And I think if you have the ability to recognize it, especially sooner than later, if you have the ability to recognize those moments where you created that separation, because you're putting the disappointment between you and the child the child is going to mess up. The child is going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. My wife's going to make mistakes. My boss might make mistakes. People make mistakes, but just reconciling those feelings, which were caused by some actions, and maybe it wasn't intentional, maybe it was unintentional, but I've had times where I've acted poorly to my kids and I've recognized it, and I have to swallow that thing called pride, and I have to make it right. Especially the times where it's in front of my wife. Like, I just feel like boom, 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 like, you dropped the A because you're not paying attention, and now you need to clean it up, and you do such a poor job. And then I'm just like, chill, man, like, chill. These are kids. Like, I have to stop in certain moments And I will tell you something that I do now. There is this voice that I use. It is a voice that tries to appear like I'm not frustrated. And it is a kinder voice, and it is a softer voice. And I use this in response to things. And my wife just feels like it's so inauthentic, like it's not even me. But I use this as a different posture on how to approach frustration or things or moments that frustrate me. And I've just learned to use this voice and this approach, this softer tone, this softer approach with my kids. And it's a lot easier to apologize when you didn't go from 0 to 100. You might have went 0 to 60, like 0 to 50, like half capacity. But I'm beginning to recognize the fruits of that just being patient, being kind, being patient with my kids. And I have to apologize less because a lot of times I didn't go off the rail. So sometimes that is the win. Sometimes that is the winning moment as a dad in those moments of being frustrated. Number 6, looking back, what did your kids actually need from you during difficult seasons of life? I'm going to read these examples because maybe this will help stir up the thoughts. Divorce stress, financial pressure, business building, busy schedule, emotional stress, and the realization, of they mostly need consistency and connection. Looking back, what did your kids actually need from you during difficult seasons of life? Man, I could tell you daily they need compassion from me because daily there is frustration. Daily there are stressors. Daily there are things outside of this family that I encounter. The things that are modeled to them in times of pressure and stress eventually become who they model to the world. I believe that our kids are going to become who we are and who we treat them as. Like there's that saying where as a parent, your voice becomes their inner voice. And I think about that more often than I used to. I just think I would love for my kids to know and see the patience that I have. And that means explaining things to them, giving them the space to mess up, giving them the space to be curious. I think that was the biggest thing as a kid, that I could not be curious. Kids are just naturally curious because they're trying to learn. And I was taking offense, like if my kids say why. When my kids say why, it might be another trigger. It might be a trigger to you too. Why? I would never ask that to my dad, because if we're appropriate, if it were necessary, I would know. Or if I were patient, I would eventually find out. That was the kind of childhood experience that I had in my experience with asking why. So now my kids ask why, and I try not to withhold information. I try to remember that they are more curious than they're being nosy, than they're being controlling, because it was a trigger. Like it's still a trigger right now. I hope to model that curiosity is okay. I'm learning to do that because I want them to continue to come to me with questions. I want them to feel like they can come ask things, that they don't have to go to a different source. Like they don't have to go to mom to get the information, or they don't have to go to their friends to get the information. We just had a fireside chat this last weekend, and when we were talking about, we knew that we wanted to talk to them about something because one of their friends brought up a topic around sex and body parts. We wanted them to feel like they can ask questions, so we brought it up, and the topic was puberty. We wanted to know what they understood about it, and we wanted to leave some space for them to ask questions. So then we go into a part of it, kind of explaining how the body changes, how the body grows, where you experience growing hair in different places. We approach like a segment of puberty. Wouldn't make it the biggest discussion, but I want my kids to be able to ask questions. I want to be able to talk and discuss these things instead of them feeling like they need to get the information from somewhere else. And so I don't even know if I answered the question, but I think that was a good segment to talk about, is, your kids being curious and not being offended as parents that your kids are asking why. Because I think people that weren't able to ask those questions as kids, I feel like they may feel those same triggers being parents when your kids ask you why. Your kids are just trying to know. They're trying to understand. All right, so let me see. I think this is going to be my last question because they're good questions. Question number 7. If your kids described you as a father 20 years from now, what do you hope they say about your presence in their lives? Man, that's a really good question. You know, me, I'm an analytical person. I'm just taking all their ages and adding 20 and thinking, I guess that's that's probably not how to approach this question. I say 20 years from now when most of them are grown, not all of them. I hope that there's open conversation. I hope that we are close. We don't have to be physically close in proximity. I would love to be supportive of activities and interests that they're willing to share with me. I hope they say that my dad texts back right away. I hope they say, I like talking to my dad on the phone. I love hearing his voice. I love being around him. I like having a beer with my dad. I love hearing the stories that he would tell us about growing up. I mean, these are things that I hope one day. I hope that my kids want to have an active relationship with me. I hope that they want to experience going through these things as a young adult and then it's experiencing their first major relationship, whether it's celebrating a really big job or a big promotion. I hope that they want me to be a part of those moments. And man, it's kind of emotional thinking about it because I don't have all those things with my oldest son currently, and he's 22. And so to imagine 20 years from now, I would like, if any of my kids have kids, I would like to be a grandparent. I think by then I'd be in my 60s, which would be cool, instead of being in my 40s, which is a possibility. I see some people that I go to school with that are grandparents, but I would like to be an active part of my kids' lives. I would love to be included in their plans. I used to think that it was so cheesy that my wife does a big family vacation still with her siblings and her parents. And then we have a big old beach house. You know, it's super bougie. It's on the beach. A lot of times there's a pool access and a beach access, which I never had growing up. So my view of it was just like, it was over the top, you know, but if you can have these experiences with the people that you've grown up with, your parents that are getting older, your kids that get to see the relationship you have with your parents and the healthy and unhealthy parts of those relationships. If your kids could witness those things and you start to model those things and those expectations, those desires that you want down the road, I would love to have a big old beach house with all my kids and then their significant others and then my grandkids. I would love that. I think that would be really cool. And that would be a very big difference from the experience as the Browns. You know, me and my brother, we've talked about trying to create these experiences with our kids and then cousins and nieces and nephews and all these things. We've talked about that. We've tried and we've planned things and it just takes time. And, you know, God willing, if we have the time and we have those opportunities, I would love to create those within my own family. So that's what I would love 20 years from now. And I would love for my kids to describe me as open, honest, funny. I'm still going to be the GOAT as far as humor in this family. I don't care if my wife tries to fight me for the title. I'm going to be the GOAT of humor. And I would love for them to be like, man, my dad has some really good advice. My dad knows what he's talking about. I would love those things. And so that's all I got. Hopefully you found this beneficial in some way, whether it was just like knowing more about me or maybe just helping you think about your experience in your walk as a dad. What would you like to see? What kind of vision do you have of change, of evolution? Maybe it's with your family, maybe it's with your business, maybe it's socially. Dad Sharpens Dad 100% is about having these discussions, getting the discussion, the inner monologue out of your head, being able to come up with words, come up with communication on how to share it with the people that are important to you. I'm just doing it. I hope to model what it looks like to be transparent, to just show you a little like vision of what I see myself and what I'd like for myself as a dad, husband, friend to many people. But hopefully you got some value out of this episode. Please share it with somebody that might benefit from watching. Tag them in the comments if you can help me out, get some subscribers. I mean, I want to get whoever wants to watch this content. I want them to be involved and listening and shaping the discussion. So that's all I got. Dad Sharpens Dad. I'm out. Peace. Peace.